Welcome to Authentic Conversations with Ryan James Miller. Join Ryan as he speaks with top business leaders and influencers and hear how they've mastered the art of authenticity to achieve all that they dreamed of. As you hear from these leaders, seek not only to be inspired by their authenticity, but to strive for and master your own.
What up, and welcome to another episode of the podcast. All right, so if you are following along, this is episode 2 or part 2 of a 9-part series that I'm doing of solo episodes on my Foundations to Freedom pillars. There's 9 pillars going from laying a foundation to ultimately living a life of freedom and realizing all of the amazing benefits to doing that. Authenticity, action, abundance, fulfillment, joy. Like there's so many benefits to doing that. So I decided that I wanted to lay out each of those 9 pillars for you, allow you to kind of just hone in on them, maybe do some personal work around each one of those. If you're catching this one as the first one, make sure you go back and listen to the last episode, episode 129. From now on, these will be done on Tuesdays typically, though that one was on a Thursday. And so last episode, I talked about laying a foundation, going from not knowing who we are to knowing who we are. And that was around purpose, passion, and principles. So if you haven't listened, maybe go ahead and just stop this one, go back and listen to episode 129 on laying that foundation before you get into this one, because each of them are going to build upon each other till we get to freedom, which is what I propose that we should all be pursuing, living a life, doing what we want, when we want, with the people that we want. It's really the way to live. Today, or on this episode, I want to talk to you about roles, about priorities, about prioritizing, about making sure that we're investing time into the right areas and that we're not putting too much stock into areas that aren't as important to us. This is a challenge that so many of us have, including myself. I don't have the problem as much now because I've spent the time to lay my roles out, prioritize them, and do that work, which I'll talk about practically just in a couple of minutes. But I just want you to listen to this for a second, because I think that you will relate to this very typical story that I deal with most of my clients. You know, if I was to ask my clients, and I do this when we're starting to work together, when we're onboarding, what are things that keep you up at night? What are you looking to achieve? More often than not, they are professionally related. And in one sense, I understand that that's the context by which most times we're being introduced, and there's challenges there. Those you get ROI, you hire a coach to solve some of those problems, make more money, get some of your time back, like I get that. But the problem is far deeper than just that is what sits at the forefront of our mind. More often than not, though we talk about the business challenges keeping us up at night, though we're often invested into moving our professional lives forward, if I was to ask you what the most important thing in your life, if you did the work from last episode, what are you most passionate about? You are probably going to assign that to something personal. For me, my wife, my kids, my friends, those things are far more important to me than my business. Yes, and again, I'll probably talk about this a little bit later. Yes, my business fuels the roof over or provides a roof over my family's head. My business allows us to go out and enjoy ourselves. My business allows me to spend more free time with my friends. There are a lot of things that my business does, but ultimately my business is not most important. If you're one of my clients and you're listening to this, I love you dearly. I really, really do. But you are not the most important thing to me. My family is. And most people would respond that way. But you are allowing things less important to creep into and to even destroy things that are more important in your life? How often do you find yourself working at home at night on the couch? How often do you find yourself invested into some project on a weekend, telling your son or your daughter, just give you a few more minutes, just give you a few more minutes? Or how about telling your spouse, just one more deal, and then we're finally going to be in the clear until you hit that, and then one more deal, and finally going to be, and then one more, and it never ends. I know that this is a little bit extreme, but have you ever thought about what it would be like to not have that person there to tell them one more time? You know, it's hard for us to understand just how devastating it would be to lose somebody close to us until we do, or until we almost do. And I lost a friend that was very close to me, but I also almost lost my wife. And as amazing as our relationship was on September 30th, 2017, it was far better on October 2nd, 2014, because I realized just how much I valued her, to the lengths that I was willing to go. I didn't care about my business when my wife's life was at risk. I just cared about her. When we got ourselves to safety, I cared about getting home to my kid. I could not get home from Las Vegas fast enough. That's what mattered. I didn't care about going back to work. I wasn't thinking about how I was going to make more money. And this is not an exercise of the demonization of money or success or job or passion and career. But I would ask you, are you allowing things less important to destroy things that are more important to you? So we're going to walk through a quick exercise here, just a couple of things that I want to help you start to lay out for yourself, to define your roles, to lay out some priority, and then start to gauge whether or not you are regularly acting as though they are in the order they should be. So first, take a few minutes, maybe during this podcast, hit pause as soon as I say this, and then come back and keep listening. The first thing that I would ask you to do is to list out the roles you play in life. List out the roles you play in life. So I'm just going to give you mine. So mine are a Christian, a husband, a father, a friend, an athlete, and then a business owner. And I'll explain each of those a little bit in just a second. So again, just list them. Don't think about priority right now. Just list them. List out the roles that you play. Are you a deeply invested member of the community? Do you serve on the board of some nonprofit? If those are roles that you want to list, go ahead. This list doesn't need to be exhaustive, meaning that you just list as many as you possibly can. So keep it somewhat concise. You can probably put a lot of things into general buckets, like a friend. There's a lot that goes into that, but list them out. So you may have more than the 6 that I do. You may have more. You may have less. Probably not, but maybe. Anyway, so list out your roles. That's the first thing that you want to do. And so let me just explain mine just really quickly, not order yet, but just my roles. So Christian. So the most important thing to me in life, number one priority, I guess that's why this is the first one. I'm kind of showing a card here for step 2, but is being a Christian, being a follower of Christ, ensuring that I am continually doing my best to understand who God has made me to be, who God has called me to live as, to be obedient to the best of my ability and understanding what the Word of God says. So that is what it means to me to be a Christian, to follow Jesus Christ. A husband, obviously, that is the role and all of the responsibilities that are entailed in that as a provider, a protector, a friend, a supporter, a lover, all of those things to my wife, Michelle. A father to my two daughters, right? All the responsibilities that come with that. That's a role that I play. Friend, I want to be deeply invested into people that love and care for me. And likewise, I want them to be deeply invested into me. That requires time, that requires effort and sacrifice and things like that. Athlete. So this was the best way for me to summarize. I'm not an athlete per se, right? I don't compete at some level in sport, but athlete to me, it just all encompasses my role of doing the best I can to stay healthy, to stay in shape, physically, mentally, emotionally, even spiritually. So making sure that I am healthy and can exercise, can push my body to the limits that God gives me to do so. That's what it means to be an athlete. And ultimately, right, I'm doing that because I'm trying to enjoy as much of my life as I can now, to honor my body as best as I can now, and at the same time to live as long as I possibly can and to enjoy life as long as I can, to fight disease, so many different things. So that's athlete. And then finally, business owner. Right? And there are a lot of responsibilities that go into that, but that's the role. So once you list out those roles, maybe even before you prioritize them, take the next week and just kind of log some general time. Make some notes around how much time you're spending in each of those areas. How much time are you investing? Yes, for each of those roles, I am all of those things all the time. I will drop everything as reasonably quickly as I can for a friend in need. I will serve my clients as often as I possibly can. I'm always a husband to Michelle. I'm always a father to Alexis and Chloe. Those things are always there. I'm always a Christian. But log some time make some notes, log time that you spend investing into each of those areas or acting out each of those areas. And just see where you're spending the majority of your time, where you're spending time in each of your roles. So that would be very interesting to you. Now, time spent definitely does not equal value, but that's a good exercise to kind of begin with. Second step there then, once you've listed those out and gained an understanding for how you're investing into them, the second thing to do is to prioritize your roles. As I take a sip of this wonderful Woodford Reserve Barrel Select bourbon that my buddy John got me because it is after 5 o'clock and neat bourbon sounded kind of good. So let me take a sip and then I'll explain to you what prioritizing your roles means. I wish I had some filler here like a great commercial. This segment is brought to you by Woodford Reserve. I don't know, but hold on a second here. That was awkward silence for you. That was a great sip of bourbon for me. Okay, back to it. So prioritizing your roles. So when I listed out for you my roles, I listed them out in a very specific order because those to me, that order to me is the order of importance. That's the order in which I value them. I value my body and being an athlete over my business. I value my friends over my body. I value being a father over my friends. I value being a husband over my kids. And I value being a follower of Jesus over everything. So again, I've prioritized those. You, maybe by way of the time you spent logged, or just by thought, you will list out in order of importance to you each of your roles. So list them out. Again, think about it. What's most important to you? Yes, you need to work to provide for your family, but I don't think you would sacrifice your family for your work, right? So list those out in order of priority. Once you're done with that's a long exercise, but it's explained very, very quickly. Again, number those, rearrange them and put them in order of importance to you. And then, and this is the hardest part for us all, is begin to align your actions to your roles in order of importance. So, to me, being a Christian means that I've got to continue to try my best to feed my mind, my heart, my soul with the Word of God as often as possible. So I try to wake up every morning and start by reading some passage of the Bible and praying. I'm not amazing at that all the time. Sometimes it's a couple of sentences. Other times it's a couple of paragraphs. Every once in a while it's a big chunk. And then I'll pray for a few minutes just to set my day right. That to me is first. But even throughout my day, I'm never going to sacrifice or compromise what I believe God has called me to for anything else. Not my spouse, not my kids, not my business. And so as I'm making decisions throughout the day, as I'm taking action throughout the day, as I'm speaking throughout the day to myself or other people, I'm always trying to do that through the lens of I am a Christian first. Again, when it comes to being a husband, am I really putting my wife above everything else below? Am I really prioritizing her? Am I taking time to invest in her specifically? And I don't do this as well as I should, but am I deeply invested into my wife? When I take my wife out for dinner on a date or take her away for a couple of days for a date trip, I don't do work unless I've literally asked permission ahead of time, given her a good reason why I need to do something, and then have her full blessing to do it. Not her, oh, okay, whatever response, but a deep agreement, mutual agreement that I need to do something. But nobody else gets that time. That's for her. For my kids, again, I'm trying to learn and do this as good as I possibly can. It's a area that I need to continue to grow in, but I try and listen and pay attention to when they're sharing. And sometimes parents, right? They get home, they rattle all kinds of things off. You're like, okay. And you can kind of glaze over it. But this takes me back to, there was a movie, I can't remember. It was kind of a cheesy Christian movie with Kirk Cameron in it. And that explains, that doesn't explain a lot, but there's a lot of cheesy Christian movies that Kirk Cameron is in. Anyway, and this guy, he has a daughter, and he takes his buddy to the library or something. The guy goes inside. They're sitting in the car, just him and his daughter. And a song comes on the radio. And she gets out of the truck and she starts dancing. And she's like, Daddy, come outside and dance. And he didn't want to dance because he felt so foolish. Like it was so silly to be out in the middle of the parking lot dancing. And then his daughter ends up dying. She's killed in a car wreck, I'm pretty sure. And he ends up back in that spot, right? Like the movie just plays it out so perfectly well. But, and he's just imagining being out in that parking lot dancing with his kid. I never want to be that. Like I never want to, whether for the sake of thinking I look like a fool or because something less important compromises my time with my kids. Like I never want to waste a moment because I don't know how many I have. And so on and so forth down the way. Now, you may be asking yourself at this point, well, what do I do when I really have to work and yet my family is way more important than my job? There's going to be times that that's the case. But if you're deeply invested into your family, if you have shared with them that they're more important, not just by way of telling them, but showing them consistently that they are more important than your job, your business, your career, then when the time comes that you need to do stuff, they're going to be 100% supportive of you needing to do stuff. But if it's just an over and over redundant thing, they're going to get sick and tired of you lying to them because that's what you're doing. And it's very easy to excuse an overinvestment into our professional life because we say that it's providing for our family. Sure. That may be partially true. But you can probably do a lot less work and spend a lot more time at home with your family. For most of us, that's that way. So what I want you to see through this exercise, number one is there are probably areas in your life that you are compromising that you shouldn't be. Things that you value real highly that you are not giving you're not investing into in the ways that you should. But more importantly than that, maybe not more importantly, but equally as important as you continue to create the best possible life that you can for yourself. And I'll just show a few cards here. When I think about living freely, when I think about freedom, ultimately, it's living out each one of my roles to the best of my ability in the way of which I've been called, and in an order of importance that supports how I value them. So if you're with me through the rest of this mini series of sorts, sharing each one of these 9 parts, and we get to the area of freedom, you're going to hear me talk about this again. Once you get your priorities in line, once you get your roles in line, you will start to experience a freedom like never before. But until you do, you are going to be so bound up in trying to figure out where to spend your time and how to spend your time, and making excuses for the ways that you're spending your time, and you are not going to enjoy a damn thing. So get clear on the areas that you're called to. Get more clear on prioritizing each one of those areas, and then begin aligning the time you spend to the priority in which you assign to each one of those roles. Hope that's helpful, guys. Again, part 2 in a 9-part series. Go back and listen to the last one on foundations, from unknown to being known. This episode and next week, off of this idea of the roles that we're called to, I'm going to be talking about habit and discipline. Those are the rhythms of life that we create for ourselves. You're not going to want to miss that one. Thanks so much. Thank you for all of your support. So appreciative of you. If you want more content like this, by the way, outside of the podcast, text BA to 714-202-9402. That's my text community. I'm regularly sharing stuff there. Follow me on social media. Instagram at RJM Sales Pro is probably the most fun place to follow me. I also have some really exciting stuff that I'm going to be sharing more and more of really soon. So if you're not yet, follow me there. You're going to want to see. It's going to be really cool because hopefully some of the stuff that I'm going to share isn't just going to be to my benefit, but to other people's too. So with that, be you, be happy, be authentic. I'm going to go finish my bourbon now. Peace.
Thank you for listening to Authentic Conversations with Ryan James Miller. If you found value in today's episode, please subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform and share it with others. To connect with Ryan and learn more, visit ryanjamesmiller.com.